Did I Stutter is a pretty good episode of The Office. This is the 12th episode of the 4th season. This is directed by Randall Einhorn. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I'll go through things chronologically. And in general, everything's fine. It's interesting enough. But there is one scene that I absolutely love. And it's just so superbly done. It starts off with Michael making a face hole in the cement. Because why not? Quite a fun way to start things off. We then find out that Pam is wearing glasses. I think she looks great in the glasses, but she doesn't feel comfortable, and understandably, because there are some awkward comments, and we'll talk about a couple of those, I think, going through the episode. We then have a brainstorming session, and Stanley is not interested. He doesn't care about what Michael is talking about, and he tells Michael no. And when Michael pushes him, he says, "Did I stutter?" Hence the title. And afterwards, Toby tells Michael that Stanley was openly insubordinate and that he needs to be told that that's not acceptable. But Michael says he was just joking. Michael doesn't want to think that Stanley was actually genuinely being quite harsh and negative, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Dwight then very intimidatingly made Andy sell him his car. How could somebody make you sell them their car? Well, with a performance like Dwight's, it was quite something. It's clear he's doing this to get back at Andy because Andy and Angela seem quite happy together, and needless to say, Dwight's not very happy about that. Michael then approaches Stanley, and Stanley will not apologise for what he did because he doesn't think he did anything wrong. Kevin then approaches Pam and said that she looks good in the glasses, and then asks her to do a librarian role play, which was a little bit awkward. And then Rainn appears out of nowhere, and it was really awkward as well because he gives Jim a formal warning on his performance. How dare you? Jim is one of the best characters. You don't give one of the best characters a formal warning. Granted, he might have a point, because usually when we see Jim, he's not at his desk working, but we only see a tiny snapshot of the day. And I'd like to think that Rainn said that because he has the sales figures and sees that Jim's not doing that great. But I would believe, purely because I want to believe this, that actually Jim works hard and he has good numbers. And because he works hard and has good numbers, he has allowed those moments of respite to talk with Pam or wind Dwight up. I'd like to think that that's the case. But at the same time, that means that Rainn only gave him a warning because he felt like it without looking at the numbers. So who knows? Hopefully it won't come to anything. We then find out that Dwight is flipping Andy's car. He bought it for a much cheaper price than it was worth. He's managing to sell it for much more than it's worth. And Andy's a little irritated by this. I think they could have done a little bit more with this. I think Andy could have had a stronger reaction to this. But there wasn't really the time in the episode either. Because the next episode, or the next scene rather, is beautiful. It takes up a small chunk of time, but every aspect of it was perfect. And Michael tells the others he's going to pretend to fire Stanley. No way, absolutely not. You do not mess with somebody's emotions like that. I absolutely hated the idea. And Michael does. Also, you don't fire somebody in the middle of the office either because that's very unprofessional. But then it's Michael Scott. What do we expect? And he does. He fires Stanley. And Stanley replies, "You're firing me over 3 words," which, yeah, I think it is exactly the right sentiment. I'm not saying what Stanley did was correct or that he was right to have that attitude in such an open place. But at the same time, it's not fire-worthy. And he was right to be annoyed by this. And immediately, he then threatened to tell corporate about everything Michael's ever done in the office because everything Michael's done is significantly worse than Stanley just saying, "Did I stutter?" And it calms down very briefly. And Michael says to Stanley, "Do you have anything to say to me?" And quite chillingly, Stanley said, "Oh, yes, I do." And we get maybe 2 seconds of breath before he launches into this. And I wrote it all down, so I'm going to say exactly what he said. But obviously my delivery is not as great as Stanley's. But he said, You are out of your damn little pea-sized mind. What is wrong with you? Do you have any sense at all? Do you have any idea how to run an office? Every day you do something stupider than you did the day before, and I think there's no possible way he can top that. But what did you do? You find a way, damn it, to top it. You're a professional idiot. And then Michael yells to stop it, and I kind of wish he didn't. I feel like that was a fair thing for Michael to do, but I really would have liked to have seen what else Stanley had to say. And he yells at Stanley to tell him to stop it, and he tells everybody to leave, apart from Stanley. And I guess for a second, it seemed like Michael was really going to lay into Stanley and say enough is enough. But he was actually upset, and he asked Stanley to help him understand Stanley's attitude. And Michael, when he's alone, he's talking to the camera, and he makes a bunch of jokes about respect, and he's trying to brush it off. But it's clear he's hurting by this, and he's really uncomfortable by the whole situation. And I feel like somebody needed to talk to Michael like that. Not necessarily in front of everybody else, but then if Michael's going to fire him in front of everybody else, I think Stanley had every right to respond in front of everybody else. And then we end with Michael in another session, and he pitches an idea. Stanley's all cool with the idea now, and Phyllis didn't think it was a good idea, and Michael orders everybody out except Phyllis. And there we end the episode. It's a really decent episode. As I said, I would have liked a little bit more with Dwight and Andy's car and how Andy responded to that. I think unless they pick it up in another episode, which I doubt they will, I feel like there was just a little bit more to have out of that, and maybe we could have had the time if we took away Rainn and Jim's performance, again, unless that scene develops into something else later down the line. And yeah, Pam looked great in her glasses, but that scene between Michael and Stanley was just brilliant. Stanley is, without a doubt, maybe a slight doubt, because Phyllis as well, but one of my favourite characters. I think Phyllis and Stanley are my two favourite characters. And dare I say it, Michael is one of the ones who comes a close second. Season 1, Michael was one of the worst characters I'd ever have to suffer through. Absolutely hated him. And now I care so much about him. So thank you to everybody who encouraged me to power through Season 1, because it's absolutely worth it. Season 4 has been brilliant. It's almost finished as well. I didn't realise there were so few episodes in Season 4, and this is because a lot of the earlier episodes in the season were double features. So we only have 2 more episodes in Season 4, and I believe the last one is a double feature. So looking forward to those. And needless to say, Did I Stutter is a pretty brilliant episode of The Office. The scene with Michael and Stanley has to be one of my favourite scenes from The Office so far. I just thought Stanley's performance as a character, but obviously on top of that, we also have Leslie David Baker's performance as an actor. Just really brilliant, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely a pretty brilliant episode of The Office.